I didn't mean to interrupt. I just figure we're kind of getting close to that hour. Go ahead and call the meeting to order. I know was probably some people will still come in, but if you're ready to tell us about your bill, um, House Bill 506, or excuse me, 659, and I'll just turn it over to you. That mic, is it 10 or? Oh, it is one.
Okay. Okay, great. Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. So today I'm here to present HB 659, which is LC 470861. I know we all may have different ideas about why the public has lost confidence in our elections, but I'm hoping we can agree that transparency is a way to restore it. And if people can see for themselves, it takes away the fear that is often the root of our division. So with that, this bill requires counties to publish all scanned ballot images. In your packets, in case you haven't ever seen what they look like, there's a copy of a scanned image of an absentee ballot and one from the Dominion ballot marking devices. And they're all run through the Dominion optical scanners and stored on their servers. And as you can see, they contain no voter identifying information, so the ballot remains secret, but people will be able to count for themselves if they want to. They can compare the vote numbers being published by the counties. And it allows us to see, I forget which county it was that had a couple of batches missing, or even anomalies in the machines. And so, the law says that elections are supposed to be done by the people, and that's why we have so many provisions for public oversight. So this is just an easy way to give everybody transparency into our elections. And it's not going to be burdensome at all on the counties. I know that's going to be the next thing. The greatest cost is going to be a thumb drive to download the images from the server. And that takes a few seconds, and then they can upload it to a Dropbox link that can then be published on a county's website. And the bill also provides if the county doesn't have a website, they can transmit that Dropbox link to the Secretary of State, and their office can publish the links. And uploading the images to a Dropbox link may take a couple of hours depending on the size of the county, but they're not manned hours. It can be doing it in the background while they do their other work. And I think the most exciting part of this is that Georgia would lead the country in election transparency, because Georgia is one of the few states with the same uniform optical scanning and servers in every county, and that wasn't true until recently. We can, if counties had different servers and scanners, we wouldn't be able to do this, but because it's uniform, we can publish it across the state. And so we have the opportunity to be the first country or state to offer this level of transparency. And what a great advertisement for Georgia. It would hopefully begin to restore public confidence for us to be able to say we lead the country in transparency. So it's simple, it's transparent, and we get to lead the state. The country, sorry.
Are there any questions? Yeah, Chairman Martin, you're for.
I have no idea. Hey, thank you, Representative Roberts. Sincere question here. There's a difference between scanning this ballot optically to ascertain the selections than there is to creating an image.
That's why we reference the ballot images.
No, I was just kind of laying the groundwork for the question. The question is, do they now, in the process of scanning it to tabulate, do they actually capture the image at that time as well?
The images are stored on the server.
Okay,
yes.
that was the question.
Yes.
So the images are stored now, because I know there's
correct.
When they scan that, the dot being here goes to candidate X.
Right. They just don't hit the button that tabulates it.
Right, tabulates. So they are storing the images now, and they store them. If they're running a batch of X, when they're running through there, do they store the images individually, or are they stored much like if you and I were scanning a 100-page document? Does it does it store 100 images or does it store one image with 100 pages? Do you happen to know
I
that?
don't know the answer to that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I mean, doesn't take away from what you're trying to do here, and I don't at all
Right.
disagree with what you're trying to do. I just wondered from a operation standpoint if they would get saying maybe somebody from the county can tell us if these would be able to download single images or batches. So
I think there's some single
It's a good-
images,
it-
but
it- It's a good question. I'm not sure, like you said, Chairman, it doesn't really change anything so much. It's just something good to know whether or not it's a 100-page PDF or whether it's a 1-page PDF, right? Each of the
right,
uploads.
I would
you know.
actually hope the batches would be in a single PDF with 100 pages, so it wouldn't be if somebody wanted to get at it, they wouldn't have to get at hundreds of documents to download. I was
Yes,
just
sir.
curious at how that would be. But
And
that's
Sure, we'd probably
I'm
find
trying
that.
to-
Find the answer to that question. I just,
She's-
if you didn't have anything else, Chairman Martin, I just had
One image per ballot is what the answer is.
there's your answer.
so yeah, it kind of goes back. And that's helpful. And I think it's just important to finish up where questions. The statement is so people understand what they're getting. Because if it had been batches, Lord knows we have seen in this last election when people see various things. If they only saw 100, if they saw 100 batches that yielded 10,000 votes, they'd say, see, there's 10,000 votes out there, but there's only 100. 100 images. So I think it's just, I was just wondering about how we would report
Sure.
that and make sure people are seeing.
Well,
So
it would be
it's
one ballot
one
per
right.
image. And I'm not saying it's going to be easy for them to count it because they're going to come in by polling location, the machines and the absentee ballots will come in so they won't be in any sort of order. I'm not asking the counties to organize them in any way.
No, I understand. None of this is
Yeah.
meant to be argumentative towards
Oh,
your,
no,
your
I didn't think it
proposition
was.
at all. It's just to get hands around it. It's in Fulton County that would have been 147,000 downloads. So, but yeah.
Well,
like
but my
the fact that
understanding is that
people
it's
can
not
see it.
hard to get it off the servers and
Oh,
then
no.
to do to a Dropbox link, it's unmanned hours in the background on the computer. So
I know we have Mr. Edwards who's going to, who wishes to speak to all three of these today. So do you want to go ahead and weigh in, Mr. Edwards? I guess what I'm thinking of though, when I see this, Representative Roberts, and, just looking at it, if we've already got the images, virtually anybody could do their own hand recount if they so desired. I mean, it might take them a while.
well, that's
but-
the point is we would cut back on a lot of that stuff because everybody's getting to see behind the curtain of the great Oz and they can do with it what they choose, but it's transparent. So
Your mic's hot. Mr.
Hello.
Edwards.
Hey, excuse me, that was inappropriate. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Todd Edwards with the Association of County Commissioners of Georgia. I think it's a great idea to instill more trust and transparency in the elections process. I don't know, I have not talked specifically on this bill with our elections officials to have the answer to your question, to recognize what additional responsibilities, time, resources, if any, it requires on them on election night. I will say that the more that I talk to, in fact, all of them I talk to want to increase transparency and further instill trust in the system. I will just say this, and my same comments would go to as a House Bill 615, that we've got numerous bills out there calling for additional accounting, reporting, turning numbers in. There's, I know, 4 that are still alive in the Senate that may come over. All we're asking is that we all get together on whichever we decide goes forward. And I know that is the hallmark of this subcommittee and of Chairman Fleming's committee in the House of Representatives, the Special Committee on Election Integrity, to figure out that, to get everyone together, figure out these solutions, to not have multiple duplicative or conflicting requirements on counties. And we'd like to work together on you with all of you and our election officials to find out what's the best way to do this, what's feasible, and how not to contradict all the other requirements that are currently pending before the General Assembly.
Mr. Chairman, can I respond to one thing? It's not all on election night. We said that they would be published by the Friday after the election and at least 2 days before certification.
Certainly.
So it's not putting a huge burden on them when they're in the midst of all of
No, I
Yeah,
understood.
so
And
I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah,
Some of them are, some of them aren't, but again, on any of this, if just combining, but I know that this committee does this and that you, both the sub and the full committee, and we sincerely appreciate.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Yeah, I mean, obviously the process here is, the last meeting that we had is to try to, make sure we vet these things, and election law is incredibly complicated. So your point is well taken, make sure we do no harm, but also do the kinds of things that I think the extremely well intended components of this bill would do.
Certainly. And if I may, the same comments for both bills. Let's, on moving
Same
on
kind of
the
thing.
reporting and let's further study, because there are multiple bills out
Well,
there.
you're the only one, here to testify today, so you're welcome to just keep your seat. And, I think we'll move on to our next bill on the agenda. But
Thank you.
unless you have anything further, Representative
No,
Roberts.
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
But thank you very much for presenting that bill today. Good bill. Representative Gamble, you ready? 506. Tell us about your bill, sir.
All right. Well, good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Appreciate the opportunity to be with you today and discuss House Bill 506. I'd like to first start by saying that this legislation is not designed to point fingers at any particular voting system or elected official. However, as this committee and the legislature continues to review our elections process and procedure, I want to be clear that this is our constitutional right as a legislature to do that. We do this at every major election to be sure that we have it right. And that's my only goal in bringing this legislation to you today.
Representative Gamble, would you just mention the sub, the LC number
Yes,
for the sub you brought today?
There is a sub. It's LC. I'm working from LC 280269S.
Thank you. Please,
Mhm.
please continue.
Sure. But that's my primary goal today. Our constituents expect us to get this right and to review this process and make changes as needed. And we know that technologies change, trends change, and we should constantly be asking ourselves as the legislature, do we have it right? And I know that's the purpose of this committee and the work that we all are committed to. So in 2002, I was an intern here at the Capitol, assigned to the House Higher Education and Education Committee, which at the time was chaired by Representative Jeanette Jameson and Representative DuBose Porter. And I remember well when Georgia went down the path with then Secretary of State Kathy Cox to purchase the first voting system, a statewide purchase voting system. And the General Assembly had passed that legislation in 2001 prior to the year that I was here as an intern, and mandated that all 159 counties would move to a modern uniform system by 2004. We finalized that $54 million deal with I've never known if it's Diebold or Diebold, but I'm going to call it Diebold today, election system. Which overhauled our election system technology at that time. And we were among the first in the nation to implement a uniform statewide computerized touch screen voting system. At that time, the contract was the largest voting system sale in the United States and included more than 19,000 AccuVote touchscreen voting systems to be distributed in our 159 counties. House Bill 506 would basically allow a local board of elections to procure a voting system based on standards set by the state election board. In section 1, you'll see how the certification process would work. As you move on through this section, I outline how the county election superintendent or director would educate the electors on the equipment. In short, this would allow an option. If your local board of election decided they wanted to use a different system, they would be authorized to do so in this bill. And as y'all know, the local elections officials in many cases are the experts in elections. They know what's best for our counties. And we take a similar approach to that with our schools and local control for our school systems. And we're reminded frequently by GMA and ACCG, and my friend Todd's here today. But we're reminded about home rule and trying to tread lightly on the decisions and authority of our local counties and cities. So county and elections officials should have the right to do what's best for them. Right now, we have a one-size-fits-all system, and what works well in Gwinnett or Bartow County may not work well for Colquitt or Glenn, and vice versa. So I'm not advocating for necessarily a different type of machine. I'm just saying that we should allow counties to have the option to choose a machine that meets the requirements set forth by Georgia law, particularly House Bill 316 from 2 years ago. If a county wants to use a voting system that meets the requirements of the law that were set forth again in House Bill 316, then the state should certify those machines that meet the requirements and let counties have the option to use them. Simply put, if a system meets the requirement of the law and is federally certified, then the state of Georgia should certify them for local use. Certification by the state shouldn't be what prevents that system from being chosen by a county. How that process happens should be up to the state election board, but a machine that meets the requirement shouldn't be held up from certification and therefore preventing counties from being able to use it. As I said a minute ago, we are still one of the fewer states in the U.S. that has a statewide system with ballot marking device. There are only 2 other states that have a statewide ballot marking device system for all voters. There's 12 states that allow counties to choose their own systems that have a ballot marking device system currently in use. And there's 38 states that totally allow counties to choose their own certified systems. So if you're concerned about how giving this option to a local board of elections or to a county would maybe complicate the reporting process, I do want to remind you that the state currently uses a third-party vendor to manage election night reporting, and that any of these certified systems eligible for consideration under this legislation would have to integrate with that third-party vendor in the reporting back to the Secretary of State. So in summary, Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you for the opportunity to present this to you. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and I appreciate this committee's work on this important topic.
Thank you, Representative Gamble. Are there other questions? Anybody either online or here in the room? Nobody online at this point. Representative, now you mentioned some of the other states and the way they do it. So would this align us with the 12 or the 30 some odd?
This would allow us with the 12 because we would still require a ballot marking device, but we would give the local Board of Elections the choice to go in a different direction if that's what they wanted to do.
So the ballot marking device of their choosing.
Correct.
And you and I had spoken briefly, and I know, there's a lot of input, potentially with, scaled back local elections, special elections, splost election kind of things that are local in nature, whereby it could potentially result in some savings, and maybe Mr. Edwards can speak to that. But, if there was a hand mark option, as an alternative, and I gathered that you felt like that was something that you might consider.
I do, and I think the scenario we discussed was if there was a local splost vote or something on a smaller scale, definitely not a statewide election, that allowing the local Board of Elections the option to use a paper ballot that would then be run through, under current law, our Dominion scanner, and used in that manner, that's certainly something that I'm open to and think would be a good option that would hopefully reduce some costs that our elections folks are currently bearing.
Chairman Martin, you had a question?
Thank you, Representative. Couple of questions. I mean, I have one, but I'm going to go back to your last statement. How would providing for a hand marked ballot reduce the cost?
Well, when these systems are utilized, I think there is more effort that has to go through the local Board of Elections to set up that equipment and to maintain that equipment. And so when you're cutting down the volume of the equipment that you're using and only using that scanner and not the touch screen and the backup battery and the labor that's involved in setting that up, it may make it a little bit easier and potentially have some cost savings if you were to allow that.
Okay, I just operationally, not to be argumentative today,
Yeah.
I don't know that I agree with you, and then because the machines have to be, the care and feeding of those machines have to exist to get to a general election. But beside that point, I feel, inclined to point out here that I'm unfamiliar in any place that we use the current ballot marking devices that doesn't ultimately scan a paper ballot. Are you familiar with any of the places where the current ballot marking? I mean, I'm having a little fun with you, Representative, here.
Yeah.
Because I get probably some of the same emails you do. People wanting to go to a paper ballot.
Right.
Is it not true that our system creates a paper ballot?
That is true.
It is. I mean, and this is our system. That ballot marking device is a glorified pencil.
Mm-hmm.
You make your selections, it prints them out for you. And I just want to use this, if I can, about the integrity of the system that we're using. What it prints on there is this QRC code. In the previous bill, we had this thing with bubbles.
Mm-hmm.
The scanner looks at this and it takes that bubble and gives the vote to that person. Just like our QRC code sees and does that, but it prints that. So I guess I hear what you're saying if folks want to do that, but I just want to be real clear that the technology that we have that exists today prints a paper ballot. It prints a human readable ballot. Those human readable ballots were counted and counted again, after the last election. So I guess, I'm trying to put it in the form of a question, but isn't it true that we have more of a paper trail with the current machines than we ever had with the ones that you mentioned that were purchased while you were an intern here, the Diebold or the Diebold machines?
Right.
We walked away from, and we never had an audit trail, and we have an audit trail now, but for some reason people are demanding a paper ballot that they didn't have for the 18 years prior to. And I just want to stress belief that when the thing prints the ballot and I look down and I see a name on it, I believe that name is counted, and I stand by that belief because it was counted and recounted in this past election cycle.
Certainly understood. And I think that was more of a sidebar conversation, not to take us away from the main topic of House Bill 506. So certainly not trying to cause doubt or question about
if I could say, jump in, I don't think your bill is in any way intended to relitigate ballot marking devices.
Correct.
Versus hand marked paper ballots.
That's right.
A question that was asked is a permissive piece of language. If the county found that it was something that they could, save on resources and money and so on and so forth, and felt like on a limited basis, a smaller election could warrant some savings along those lines, that they could maybe go in that direction. But certainly point taken.
No, well, and thank you, Chairman Blackmon. As you do many times, you articulate much better than me. I believe that is exactly what the gentleman wishes to do. I didn't want anybody to listen to this hearing or see your bill as a lack of, I don't have one. I don't believe the gentleman does either. What Chairman Blackmon said, a relitigation of the correctness that the count produced in the past election. That's what I was trying to. You did it much better than I, Chairman Blackmon. Thank you.
Yep.
I just felt like I let us. Mr. Edwards, did you have any comments? I know you're signed up again.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Once again, I'm Todd Edwards with the Association County Commissioners of Georgia. I would agree, home rule something we stand for at ACCG and also GMA, and options are great. I think the concept here is good. There was noted earlier that many states, we're one of the few states that have uniform statewide voting systems. And I think we're thankful. I know definitely counties are, in the respect that when this legislation was passed back in, was it 2001?
Mm-hmm.
That part of that, and I'll draw your attention to it, is lines 17 through 19, and I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to pull this back up. My screen went dead. That these would be, when we went to the statewide system, that these would be provided by the state, by each county, or to the counties by the state. That's on line 18. And also going further, lines 37, 38, the state shall furnish a uniform system. I'm going to be honest with you. We're quite thankful that the state has stepped up, because few other states have ever done that. Beginning in 2001, to provide the funding. Elections is a shared responsibility between the state and Georgia's counties. We do spend a lot of money, a lot of time administering, but we cannot thank you enough. We were fully supportive when the latest round of machines back in, I think it was House Bill 316, if I'm not mistaken, a few years ago. There was debate on, going with a statewide system, going through this process where the state sets criteria, certifications, or the dimensions, or excuse me, that's not the right word, on the machines, and we could purchase them. But we're sincerely appreciative the state has stepped in. I've talked with our colleagues around the country, many of those who have variant systems that are not uniform statewide, and the representative is absolutely right, and that we are unique. But in most of those other states, I'm willing to guess that the counties had to pay for them themselves. Now, there are many things we do pay for ourselves, but here we're thankful the state does it. Removing this language jeopardizes that for the future. Should we either go with machines, or the current machines get thrown out through a court case? We're always facing legal challenges nowadays, and my guess is we'll continue to do so. But we're appreciative. We like the system. We like it uniform. We appreciate it so much that the state pays for it. And those are our concerns with the legislation.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, and Todd, we talked a minute ago, though,
Sure.
I understand your financial concern, but as far as which system we utilize, giving the county the option to choose, if the financial issue was not the primary issue, there is really no opinion about that from you guys. Is that correct?
No, I don't think we would have an opinion. Let me say it this way. It's good to have options. I think what comes with uniformity, or the statewide paying for it, is uniformity. I don't know. Obviously, that's a different question for legislators to entertain. If counties get their choice and one may be more than expensive than the other, I, as a legislator, would say, okay, well, then you pay for it. But I mean, if that were in front of us and the state paid for us, certainly our counties would probably appreciate that option. I don't have a concrete position for you, but perhaps.
What was that last part of your statement, Mr. Edwards? I'm sorry.
We don't have an official position on that aspect of the bill, going with different technology. We do on the state paying for it. We're very much in favor of that. And, I'll be honest with you.
All right.
No,
All right, we get
the
it.
last little piece,
Yeah.
did you say something at the last end of your statement?
No,
You
I
said something
don't.
about favorable to something. I'm sorry, I just missed it.
Sometimes I miss what I say myself. I think what I stated was that options are certainly good. I think some counties would want the option to go with different technology, so long as it met state standards. But we don't have the official position on that. It's not something I brought up with.
How about the permissive option, on a local scale, smaller scale, to use a hand mark option? Is that something you have any intel on?
It's not something that we've run by and got an opinion on. I think there's cost to everything. I mean, obviously, when you go with a hand marked paper ballot, who pays for the printing, that sort of thing. I know that they would take into consideration. In short, I don't have an answer as far as our position on that, but I know that everything comes with cost. Then you enter voter error into the process. And discerning, curing ballots, what is a vote, what isn't, have they followed instructions, and that takes a lot more time. So you'd have to weigh, the pros and cons of each. And overall, I think it's far more easily facilitated to go with a machine marked ballot as opposed to hand, because of the fact of human error being what it is, entering into the process, and then having to redo those ballots or cure those ballots.
All right, Representative Gamble, I appreciate that. I don't see any more questions. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee, appreciate the opportunity to be with you today.
Yes, sir. Chairman Jones, you're up. We 615, HB 615. All yours, Chairman.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
The other Todd in the Capitol, I guess, doesn't want to hear this bill. Hey, Todd. Members of the committee, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you about House Bill 615, LC 280251. Essentially, I can give you a very quick summary of this. The idea is to be able to capture no later than 10 p.m. on election night what I, in common terms, call the denominator of the ballot, meaning if you think of how Georgians cast their ballot, you can generally put that into 4 buckets. That's in-person election day, that is advanced voting in person, that's advanced voting by mail, and then there's a 4th bucket that takes on a series of different, I'll say, types of ballots. That could be anything from provisional, military, etc. The goal is to be able to provide to all Georgians across the entire state that no later than 10 p.m. that there would be, and again, this is for a primary, general, runoff, etc., there would be a public accounting of effectively how many ballots were cast into 3 major buckets. And if you think of those 3 major buckets, that's those first 3: election day, advance in person, and advance by mail. The determinant here are basically the driver for this particular bill really comes from the idea that we want to be able to provide to all Georgians confidence that we understand that there were X amount of votes cast statewide, X amount of votes cast in a House district, a Senate district, county, you name it. And then from that point on, we understand where the goalpost is. And then we would expect as votes are being tabulated, you'd be able to see effectively as it gets closer and closer and closer to that ultimate number that was announced. Now, we would expect it to be a little bit of variation because we don't have that 4th bucket in there. But the reason why we don't have the 4th bucket, committee members, is because of the fact provisionals, military, etc., are going to most likely come in sometimes by 7 p.m. on election night, but they do have, especially military, has a couple extra days. So we did not want to stall the idea of announcing this. So we went with the 3 larger buckets, making up a vast majority of the ballots. When I say vast majority, we're talking 99% plus. So I'll stop right there and take any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Chairman, any questions for the author?
Just for the simple among us, basically, you just want to know how many there are.
Yes,
So
sir.
they don't keep dribbling in.
That's right. And what we want is, as maybe the press is offering it, maybe one of the county election board heads are offering it, when they say, and I'm just going to make up a number because I'm from Forsyth County. If Forsyth County says there's 150,000 votes that were basically cast in those 3 buckets, 50,000 each, let's say, just for easy math, then we would expect, as the tabulations are coming in, for the number to be 150,000. And clearly we're going to see a little bit of variation afterwards because of provisional, because of military, but that variation is very small, literally in the 0.01 range.
Does the bill
Yeah.
call for what happens if someone at the county published the 150, but they, fail to get a precinct, in? I mean, clearly we don't want to, I don't think you're suggesting that we omit the counting of those votes just because the county made a mistake. Does it speak to,
Yes. So
Okay.
if I could direct you to lines 38, 39, and 40, the last 2 sentences: the results of such comparison and all explanatory materials will be reported to the Secretary of State. The reason for that discrepancy shall be fully investigated and reported to the Secretary.
Right.
So it does not forbid I'll say, hey, we just realized we didn't include X precinct out of North Fulton, but they are going to have to provide to the Secretary of State basically what that accounting is and then why. And then what was the discrepancy? Was it 100 votes or was it 1,000 votes, et cetera?
and just to be clear, we in North Fulton appreciate the fact you're letting us vote in Forsyth now.
I went with North Fulton since I know the member is out of North Fulton.
Thank you.
Representative Burnell, I think you had a question. She's online with us.
Yes. With the passage of 531, it's going to create more lines, and a lot of precincts aren't going to be closed. So how will that affect the fact that those areas that have larger precincts, all their precincts their counts won't be in? Because we're going to have people standing in line till 10, 11 o'clock since we won't be doing a lot of the other voting. We're limiting the time. So how will that affect them?
Respectfully, Representative Burnell, I disagree with that assessment. I do not believe that that is an assessment that is accurate based on 531. 531 calls for additional training, so I expect there to be additional efficiencies. 531 calls for the counties to open up additional precincts if they do expect there to be lines. 531, I believe, provides for an additional weekend time in terms of those individuals being able to vote. And 531 definitely continues to provide for mail-in in terms of ballot requests, and then also being able to mail in your ballot. So I don't necessarily agree with that assumption. However, if for some reason we see that, say, a judicial order extends the time, or if for some reason those individuals were in line by 7 o'clock, and if you're suggesting there's a 3-hour line after individuals were in line by 7 o'clock, then in fact it's going to be talking about, again, they would have to report to the Secretary of State why they had to go past 10 p.m.
Okay, does that mean that, another question? I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, please go ahead, Representative Brunel.
Okay, so would that mean that are we saying that the county would be at fault, or they're just reporting for informational purposes?
Again, that is left to another part of the statute, and the Secretary of State will have to make that as part of his or her investigation in terms of if there is fault, if there is malfeasance, if there was intentional action, or was it purely, as Chairman Martin said, a mistake. Again, I'll let the investigators make that decision, and then in another part of the statute, they would have to make the determination if there would be something that the county would have to do.
Okay. And I think the correction is that with 531, all they did was gave one more Sunday. They didn't give extra time on the weekend. Thank you.
And if you may,
Are there any other questions, the author? Yes, Representative, excuse me, Chair Lady Smith.
If you could summarize the purpose of this, is inventory control, so to speak, is that where you're headed with this?
yes, ma'am, and I would add to it confidence. People just want to know, and if we can use inventory control, Walmart knows it has 100, I'll say, boxes of Tide, and they want to know that when they sell everything out, that they have the revenue on 100 boxes. Here again, we just want to know if there's 5 million ballots outstanding, that 5 million ballots were counted, not 5.5 or 4.5 for that matter. We just want to give confidence to the voters of what was effectively in that denominator, or basically how many we expect there to be a count for.
Further question?
Yes, ma'am.
So you're not going to error or anything like that. That is left to the Secretary of State and the Board of Elections at the local level to correct any unusual information. You're just doing strictly inventory control as a measure against what was cast.
That's correct. So they basically, as you know, each precinct has the counts in terms of the scanners and things like that. Obviously, absentee by mail is happening at most time at the county office. I don't want to assume that in all 159 counties. And again, that's going to be the scan count.
Thank you.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Chairman, is right now current law, can the Secretary of State's office have somebody posted to be, observing and looking at this, on election night? I mean, if they had the resources in every county, they conceivably could under current law. Is that correct?
Under current law, if the resources were all there, and I would assume it would go out of the SOS, or they'd have to coordinate with all 159 counties, then yes, there is an interpretation of current law where they could in fact get that information and post it into a conspicuous place. However, it's not quite as, I think, prescriptive as 615 is in terms of requiring the counties to report up and requiring the Secretary of State's office to post it in a conspicuous location.
Would the way your bill works, would it in real time kind of require that resolution? The hours arrived and the tally has not been, the denominator number has not been provided. I mean, is that when you would, start the process kind of real time, looking at it, deciding why they haven't, what the recourse is, that kind of thing?
I would suspect, I don't want to speak for the Secretary's office, but I would suspect that if for some reason there is a delay, that the Secretary's office would be in contact with the Board of Elections of that particular county, asking the supervisor can you please explain why you don't have this information to us? And again, there may be, to Chairman Martin's point, there might be a very good, valid reason for that. However, we want to make sure that it's not just communicated to the Secretary's office, but it is documented so that every Georgian will see the reason why. And I'm just going to, I'll pick on my own county so no one feels like I'm pointing fingers. Forsyth was late because the South Forsyth precinct was late coming in because they had an electricity outage, and that lasted for 3 hours. And again, I'm making that up, but I just want to make sure that that is public so everyone understands why Forsyth was late, not just trust us. Forsyth was late because there's a good reason.
Anybody else have any questions? Mr. Edwards, you want to talk to this one as well, speak to this one as well?
Mr. Chairman, good day, Representative Jones. I'll speak earlier. I spoke to another bill. There are several, I'm Todd Edwards with the Association of County Commissioners of Georgia. There are several bills out there, a few in the House, several may come over from the Senate on reporting requirements. I think we're all for transparency at ACCG. I'm not sure. I mean, we'll go through each one. They have different responsibilities, different timeframes. The intent is good. As we go forward, and I know, and as I mentioned earlier, this subcommittee and the overall committee has done an absolutely great job on condensing and working through what are often conflicting requirements being proposed for county election offices on election night. We'd certainly like to be at the table to find out which one's the best, provide suggestions, get feedback from our members, the election officials, and work with you toward trying to consolidate. Right now, there's just too many out there and they're conflicting. It's one or the other, and let's work together to perfect it. And I trust and know that's what this committee does. And I've worked greatly with Representative Jones in the past on this and on other legislation. I know he'd be open to any comments we may provide as well. I think, I've heard the debate. There is a concern if people were still in line that late, whatever may turn out with drop boxes, if we have those until 7, but we have to check them at 5 and then again at 7. So there's a lot of stuff in play that could impact this. But again, this committee has done a great job this session and trying to weed through the over 86 election bills or so that we've seen out there. And it's just right now at this stage, it's nerve wracking for us to know which one exactly is going forward, how to coincide all of them together and make the process work while meeting, the transparency and the accountability goal as set forth in this legislation.
Accountability and transparency, right, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
That's just the thought process. Do you have anything further?
Nope, I think that's it. And I do agree with Mr. Edwards. I know the Senate has passed a bill. It's similar to this. I know that Representative Wade has considered a bill that is, I'll say, related to this. I think what we can do best for the citizens of Georgia is make sure the best practices of all those get together and really put together something that works.
Well, thank you very much. I know your time is short, so Mr. Chairman, appreciate it. And we'll look forward to more discussions on that piece of legislation.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody have anything further? Well, Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion is second. All right, good. We stand adjourned. Thank you all very much.